Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Today's episode, we have a special guest, and his name is Aaron Lofaro. Aaron is a Los Angeles based astrologer, and he has so much information to share with all of you guys. He knows so much about astrology. We start off with the basics, talking about signs, birth charts. We talk about what a retrograde is. Everyone's talking about Mercury being in retrograde, but we come to find out that it actually isn't a bad thing after all. We talk about compatibility and even how pets and businesses have their own specific birth chart. They have their own sign. So, really, astrology rules so much in every aspect of our life. One of the biggest questions we all have, 2020, what's going on and what the future, the rest of the year holds. And Aaron shares his predictions with us. So, once again, thank you guys for tuning in. And please leave a review if you enjoyed this episode. It really helps me out. Thank you. Enjoy. Hi, Aaron. How's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
Good. It's so nice to talk to you. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Going through so many transitions in the world right now.
Yeah, I think for everyone, it's been a while seeing each other with quarantine and all of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
How have you been?
I've been good. Getting more situated into the new norm and figuring out my next phase as we'll talk with some of the astrology happening. Just, aligning with what it is that I want to create in my life and the vision that I have. And for everyone right now, we are being pushed to follow that impulse to do the thing that you always wanted to do, but you have to just do it, start it. And I think in some cosmic blessing, being removed from the monotonous of day-to-day routine is allowing everyone to reconnect with something passionate. So I'm just getting back into my art, getting more in depth into astrology and branching into how I see my career and day-to-day work evolving from here.
Yes, yeah. When I came up with the idea to have a podcast, you were one of the first people that came to mind because for so long we had conversations, deep, in-depth conversations about astrology, and your knowledge is so impressive. And I'm so excited to talk to you. So thank you first off for speaking with me. But if you want to start off by just kind of sharing, when did you become interested in astrology? Was it something that you grew up with, or more recently you just started studying?
So, of course. And again, thank you for reaching out. I love chatting about astrology, and anytime there's another platform to kind of express the benefits of it is very helpful. So, my background began at an early age. I would say my first instance of thinking of the stars was in third grade. We learned about constellations, and when I first heard about, being a certain sign, Sagittarius, and which is a stargazing, seeking of knowledge energy, and just from there, always looked up at the heavens. But the understanding of astrology came much later in middle school and high school, when astrologically I had a transit. I had Uranus move over my ascendant, which sparked this quest and in-depth knowledge to understand astrology. And from there, I started going to bookstores and libraries and pulling out little books here and there, mostly just for self-discovery. And from there, it kind of spiraled, but into the more in-depth and professional outlets of understanding astrology. But a lot of that didn't come until 2014, 2015, when I had Saturn was going through Scorpio, and then it went over my Sun through Sagittarius, and I'm in the process of completing my Saturn return in Capricorn. And it's been over those last 6 or 7 years. A lot of it kind of sparked in 2012, one of the great awakenings, the prediction at the end of the Mayan calendar, the shift into another plane, as part of one of the waves of awakening that I've mentioned to you before. So it's been this last that is the last half of a decade that I have countless books. I've watched countless informational things. I've followed so many astrologers to understand their knowledge. I've read charts and began to make my own observations and test out the astrological things, because so many people feel that it's like something clearly works with it. There is something that clearly has kept astrology in human society for thousands of years. It's like, no matter how people deny its use and truthfulness to it, it has never faded into extinction and has only grown. And part of this renaissance, as we're entering and getting really rooted in the age of Aquarius, which will last for the next 2,000 years, we have an upsurgence, a rebirth of the art and the science that is astrology.
And that's what I was going to ask too. So for people who have no idea, even the basics of astrology, what is the reason that it's like remained around so long through thousands of years? Why does it keep coming back?
So because on some level, it resonates with people, and there is a truth to it. There is something about it that is necessary for humanity, and just from your own advancement of astrology, you've learned more about yourself. Astrology is a powerful tool of self-awareness, and a lot of times I think people get caught up in it being about divination or fortune telling, when it's honestly less about that and more about self-understanding, self-empowerment, and understanding and interpreting the energies we feel. And in the process of learning astrology and understanding the rhythms of our solar system, we actually realign with the natural order and the natural structure we're meant to be within. And where, you see people panic in their whole life is going kind of shambles. Well, usually it's because they're not aligning with something, and that energy is kicking them hard in the ass to get them to wake up and calm down and ease into the rhythm. And similar to this current situation of this pandemic and having more isolated from people, which is seen in the astrology. And many astrologers predicted a pandemic coming in this time frame because of certain planets aligning, that it's clearly proven. And the main issue is having to relook at the systems in power that like to dismiss all of this because they know it will empower the people to remove them from power. So that's, I think, why it stuck around. I'm part of the occult, which, the hidden knowledge, the hidden teachings that have survived the age of Pisces, the age of deception, the religious doctrines being turned into some sort of way of controlling the masses. And, not to get too political with the whole, corrupt patriarchy that is still trying to enforce its wills against the people that are getting progressively more and more discontent and now starting to rise up through what is most likely another revolution, which again the energies speak of too.
Right.
And we're not astrology. No one is exempt from it. We are on a planet that is influenced by the orbits and gravities of the other objects in our solar system. And if we're on that planet and we're these tiny beings made up of the same material as that planet, well, then simple logic would say, well, of course we're affected by it, because our planet is kept in its orbit because of the orbits of the other planets around it and their gravities. Well, we're not immune to that because we're on that same object. And so astrology is sort of this understanding of the energies, how they interact, and it sort of brings astrology is it's like astronomy with spirituality. It's understanding of the cosmos, but with the spiritual aspect applied to it, of the meaning, the understanding, the why. Why are we here? Why do I feel this way at the same time every month? Well, it's probably your lunar return. Or my birthday, leading up to my birthday, it's always a little hectic a few weeks before. It's because it's like the final exam of your year, and your solar return is one of the most powerful things for you. It's when the sun returns to where it was at the time of your birth, and you get to start a whole new cycle as an individual.
Right.
And collectively, we also have certain influences. This past weekend, we had a major eclipse ending a cycle in the Cancer Capricorn polarity that just, I think, rocked a lot of people's worlds. And if you're looking at America and the state of America currently, that eclipse was exactly opposite America's natal sun. So this cycle, this major closure of related people, the other, relating to this invisible structure that is America. And we'll see that continue to play out for the next 6 months and into 2021. And the 2020s are going to be a wild ride for everyone, but there's ample opportunity for everyone to shift into the paradigm that they dream of, the world they dream of, obviously through hard work and dedication and persistence and belief and faith in themselves. But I don't know if I answered the question.
No, you did. You're good. I feel like I have so many questions that I'm like, oh, how am I going to get through all of these questions in an hour? Because you're just so knowledgeable. And I guess, what would you say is the biggest misconception related to astrology? Because you kind of touched on how with religion, it's viewed a certain way, and with it's kind of grouped with like psychics and the occult and everything like that. And a lot of people look at it as something dark or something that is more deceptive. But what would you say to like a non-believer what astrology is, and maybe how they can kind of open their minds?
I usually I like to speak about the moon, or I like to state some scientific facts that kind of I feel prove astrology, even though the sciences themselves are very against astrology. But it's like the moon. So the moon, we know, affects our tides on the planet, and we know our moods change day to day. And one day will be it'll be an amazing day. We'll feel so great, and then the next day will be the exact opposite. Well, the moon changes signs every about 2.5 days. So when the moon's in Leo, you might feel a certain way, but when it shifts into Virgo, that's a whole different area of your life that will have your emotional body, which is what the moon represents, will be influenced by that new area, and that could be in conflict with other areas of your energy. And with moon affecting the tides, and even if you go into any of the medical ward, they'll say that they usually have more ERs and stuff will have far more people come in during full moons, because it's when everything's at its height, illuminated, and the darkness is illuminated, and we can see things that were previously hidden during the new moon and the dark moon cycles. And there's like this disconnect where people think that we are somehow separate from these natural rhythms. It's like no one would question an earthquake affecting people if they're in that general vicinity, but for some reason, when it comes to applying that the moon affects water on Earth, and that science also has proven that during full moons, the water tension in our body shifts unless you retain more water, and that things are a little more tense. That in itself is part of what astrology is. Astrology itself and the 12 signs are talking about 12 different vibrations of energy. 12 is a harmonic number, and many other aspects of mysticism and sacred geometry and sacred mathematics will speak of the number 12 and speak of things that are divisible by 3, the rule of 3. And so there's always core. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and since kind of bringing it back to the water, I think I don't know the exact amount, but 70% water.
Just like the planet.
It would have to have some effect on us, like how it does the tides and everything like that.
Yeah, because if you think about a large body of water, well, the water molecules in the ocean are no different in size than the water molecules in our body.
Right.
Is that correct? I don't know. That's something that I guess.
It sounds.
Later, but
Yeah, no, it totally sounds right to me. And then I kind of just looking at like an individual who might not know much about astrology. Can you talk a little bit about when people say, "Oh, I'm a Libra" or "I'm a Cancer"? Like how much deeper, I guess, it gets, and then maybe what to look at to take that next step. So, like the moon sign, the ascending, and really what a birth chart is.
Of course. So a lot of times with people, their whole anti-astrology paradigm is they're like, oh, I've read things about Taurus, but it doesn't sound like me at all. Well, you were born in the month of Taurus. We call it a season. So Taurus season is essentially a month. And the energy of Taurus speaks of that month. It's where the sun is in relation to the earth. So when the sun is in Taurus, the earth is transiting Scorpio, the opposite, the yang to the yin of Taurus, because everything, there's a law of polarity in astrology. So you can never understand one sign without understanding the other sign, because your sun sign is your spiritual essence. It's your life force. It's the electrical and fire currents that animate the body. Your earth sign, which is always opposite the sun. So you're a Libra, your sun is in Libra, but your earth is in Aries. So the earth was in the position of Aries at the time of your birth. Your earth sign is your corporeal body. It's your corporeal form. It's your physical body. It's the vessel that anchors your spirit into the physical reality. We live in a physical world. And understanding that polarity, so we've already incorporated two signs now. So every Libra needs to understand Aries to find balance, and every Aries needs to understand Libra to find true balance between their spiritual and physical. So from there on, we have these other signs. So when people say, "Oh, well, I don't resonate with my sun sign," well, what's your rising? Your rising sign is what sector of the sky. So we live on a sphere on the planet Earth, and around the sphere would be 360 degrees, and divided by 12 would give you 30 equal segments of 12. So when we say my sun is in Libra, that means that the sun was in the sector, the sun was rising in the sector of Libra at the time of my birth, and only spans those 30 days in Libra during that cycle. But the rising sign, so say if you were born in Libra season, the sun's in the sector of Libra, but the sun was setting. And so on the opposite side of that chart would be Aries. So your rising sign is whatever sign or sector is on the eastern horizon rising at the time of your birth. So someone born at noon will, whatever sign is 90 degrees from that sign would be on the ascendant. So if I was born around noon, my sun is in Sagittarius, so I have the sun at the top of my chart, but my rising sign is Pisces, because Pisces was on the eastern horizon while I was being born.
And what would your rising sign kind of dictate in your life, or what would that represent?
The rising sign dictates the structure of the chart. So the first house is where the rising sign begins. That is the sign of the self. It is the physical appearance of the physical body. And the thing that everyone sees, I like to always equate the rising sign to the front door of your house. It's the thing people first see when they get to know you. But as they enter your house and they go into the different rooms, they learn more things about you. And they're like, oh, you're outside of your house said you're a Gemini, but when I get in there and get to know you, you actually act more like a Scorpio or a Capricorn. And
I love that way of looking at it too. I think it simplifies it.
Yeah. And so then you have, once you have 12, everyone has all 12 signs. How they're expressed is differently, and where the other placements in your chart are, and the relationship they have to each other. Those tell us even more information. So we've mentioned sun sign, we've mentioned earth sign, we mentioned rising. The other core of there's a core four that everyone needs to understand. It's their rising, their sun, their earth, and then their moon. So the moon obviously revolves around Earth and reflects the light of the sun. Your moon sign is your emotional body, because in your emotional body is physical and tied more so to your physical body, because the Earth and the moon are part of their own orbital system. It's like if you were to equate this Earth to the sun, the moon revolves around the Earth, so it's sort of like the Earth itself is a reflection of what's going on. Your moon sign sort of translates what happens in physical reality to your sun sign. So the relationship between your sun and your moon is very important because your emotions are how we perceive reality and our first interaction. And then that goes back in, and in conjunction with your Mercury sign, which is your mind, it's sort of how we process and have an understanding of how reality works specifically for us. And so each of the planets sort of represents a different aspect of what makes us the beings we are. Humans are emotional beings, and a lot of times I get frustrated with some astrologers who don't place enough emphasis on the moon sign, because humans as a species are emotional beings, and our emotions are how we actually create our world. And so if we're not paying enough attention to our moon sign, and a lot of times, going back to what I was saying about how someone would say, oh, I'm this sign, but it doesn't sound like me. A lot of times people actually, when I was learning my own readings, they actually resonate more with their moon sign, or in a lot of cases, actually their Mercury sign, which is your mind. Because humans, and we're all kind of going through this journey of consciousness and understanding more. A lot of times humans think that they are their mind, and they think that they are their thoughts, which is where your Mercury sign might have more of an emphasis. So, and your Mercury sign can only be on either side of your sun by 28 degrees. So basically, if your sun is in Libra, depending on where you are in Libra, your Mercury sign can only be in Virgo or Scorpio. So if you're born at the beginning of Libra, like your Mercury could only be in Virgo or Libra.
Pretty close, right?
What was that?
It would have to be pretty close, like in proximity, like you said.
Yeah, so like you were born on the first day of Libra season. Your Mercury is in Libra, so your sun is at 1 degree of Libra. Your Mercury is at 8 degrees of Libra. So there's only 7 degrees between them. It has to be super close. If you were born at the end of Libra, your Mercury could only be in Libra or in Scorpio. But since you were born at the beginning, there was a possibility that you could have had your Mercury in Virgo, but you don't. Your Mercury is in Libra. But so a lot of times when people think, oh, I don't sound like that, I actually resonate more with the sign before me. Usually their Mercury is in the sign before their sun, and they do attach more to how their mind processes everything. My Mercury is in the sign after, in Capricorn. So I express myself like a Sagittarius, but I think like a Capricorn. And a lot of times, usually what that means is when your sun comes before your Mercury, you usually act first and think about it later. When it comes before your sun, you think first, then act.
That's so interesting.
Another way of reading into a chart for people is also just the position of the planets. So we have a Venus sign, we have Mars sign, Jupiter. Ceres is a planetoid between Mars and Jupiter. A lot of people don't know about, that actually has closer resonance than even Pluto, which Pluto still has a major importance on a chart. And there's thousands of asteroids and dozens of other outer planets in the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud that have just been discovered in the last 20 years that are also starting to add a lot of valuable information to astrology. And the main thing, essentially, because going back in time, it was only in the 1700s that Uranus was discovered, and subsequently later, a few decades later, Neptune. And so up until that time, we only had up through Saturn. But as we evolve as a species collectively and our consciousness expands, we start to discover these new planets. And so while you get a lot of very valuable information from traditional astrology, it's also very helpful to stay up to date with newer placements and incorporating Ceres, which is between Mars and Jupiter, into charts so that you can actually have a fuller conscious understanding of your own life. Part of what's happening collectively right now is due to aspects Pluto is making with a planet called Eris and a planet called Haumea, which they all orbit out far deep in around the sun near Pluto, or out in that vicinity. And with those aspects, it's coming to new awareness. Eris speaks of the other, speaks of the disenfranchised, those who are the outcasts of the quote-unquote society in power, or those who don't understand fully. And how Maya brings with it vast, dramatic change and the need for getting one's way or having your voice heard. And with this dynamic, we're seeing if Pluto involved, which has to do with power and control at its lowest vibration and enforcing someone's will over your will over someone else, it's this larger message and conversation that is carrying on and helping us make these conscious decisions, saying, oh yes, every life matters, and how do I relate to that? Do I fall with the old paradigm, or do I understand, or am I changing and growing? And so as we discover these new planets and we learn about them and understand their astrological significance, it actually gives the individual more power because they have more consciousness of the system, our solar system, and knowing that specific, even scientific, astronomical aspects give a lot of amazing insight into astrology, because at one point in time, astronomy and astrology were one thing, and they only split in the past few centuries as who knows why certain people just did not want to even humor spirituality or astrology in that it can be of assistance and speaking to these larger things that kind of were implemented during the Dark Ages.
And that's kind of pushing forward like more of a universal consciousness too, as we discover like more far out planets and different.
Yeah, and there's actually a planet that has been discovered to have a 12,000 year orbit around our sun, named Sedna. And Sedna is approaching perihelion, which means it's its closest approach to the sun. And it will reach that point in 2076. So about I can't do that math. We're in 2020, it's like 50-something years, like 56 years. It's going to reach its closest orbital approach to the sun. And part of what Sedna's message is transpersonal consciousness, the understanding of this collective and huge shift in humanity. The last time that Sedna was at this point, humans were barely leaving the Bronze Age. So we're barely entering the Bronze Age. We were still like, I think in a stone 12,000 years ago. I'm not that much of an anthropologist, but
a long time ago.
Very long time ago. And as you said, yes, we're coming into this more collective understanding. I mentioned having an Earth sign, having a Gaia sign of our planet. That's actually a very new concept in astrology that I've really been pushing for the last few years, because without it, the polarity of your sun doesn't have a representation. So a lot of people won't even think, I only need to know about Cancer, and I don't have to worry about Capricorn because whatever. But it's like you do have to worry about it because that's how you actually find more balance. And a lot of your lessons in life will help you cultivate your equilibrium between the extremes of the polarity. But it also brings with it a global consciousness, an environmental consciousness, a body consciousness. If you think about the state of the world, how many health issues do we have today? So many people who are overweight, or diabetes has become a larger issue, or all these mental illnesses. There's these physical diseases or dis-ease being manifested because people don't even want to think about their body. Think about trying to tell someone who's never meditated before to meditate. They always say, I can't meditate. It's like, well, do you not breathe? Meditation is just breathing.
Yeah.
And calming myself. And just having this more of a balance of understanding, of knowing that, it's not one or the other, it's a balance of both. We live in a reality of opposites, of polarities, and we need to find completeness. It's about reconciling, finding that middle ground. And as we see, that's been happening for the last few centuries with the political parties of the United States, where it's become two polarized extremes. There's truth to both sides, there's ignorance on both sides, but we need to find more of a middle ground. And
kind of finding that balance.
And value humanity and life and brotherhood and sisterhood more than profits and margins.
Right. One question that I do have with how you said it's all important, and obviously with the 12 signs, can you talk a little bit about one of the most popular questions related to astrology when it comes to compatibility and kind of love interest? So what if there are two people who are together and maybe their signs, it may say that they're not compatible? Do you think that that's like a tell-all saying that they shouldn't be together? Do you think that there's hope? Or if you could just kind of touch on compatibility a little bit.
Of course. So a lot of people, again, they only consider the sun sign. And they're like, oh, I'm Sagittarius. I'm not going to get along with a Taurus. But in reality, the compatibility, yes, your sun signs matter, but you want to look at where the moon is at. If your moon is in the same sign as them, regardless of what their sun sign is, you're always going to relate on an emotional level. From there, you also want to look at your Venus and Mars sign and the relationships between each other and the synastry, because Mars is your divine masculine and Venus is your divine feminine. They're your assertive and receptive energies. We all have both. And again, we have to balance the polarity of our masculine and feminine. And this will be true even for non-binary people. It's like you would still want to look at your Mars and Venus in terms of compatibility. And there's also there's asteroids that can consult, like Cupido or Eros or what's another one, Psyche even, where they can give more of a flavor to compatibility. But more so as well, it has to do with the consciousness of the individual. So we each have all 12 signs, and where that sign falls for each of us dictates the kinds of lessons that we experience. So for one person, they could be a Sagittarius. If they're a Scorpio rising, then Sagittarius is their second house of value, physical resources, money, self-worth. And whereas someone who would be a Cancer rising, Sagittarius would be their sixth house of day-to-day work, routine, health, and even pets fall in that area as well. So that energy, when you meet someone who would be a Sagittarius sun or moon, they emphasize that area of your chart. So if you're someone who consistently meets a bunch of Leos, your universe is saying you have to learn this lesson in whatever capacity that it is, depending on your consciousness and your awareness of energies, your own energies, interacting with other people's energies. You then can determine how likely it would be that you be with someone. But usually, typically, especially when you see long-term relationships, there's always something compatible that would say, oh, that's why they're together. Because if your charts don't align, it will never align. We all have those. It's like there's people you meet and you had every intention of wanting to hang out, but it never happens. It's because your charts aren't aligning, and you cannot force those things. That's actually when we get in these. You start to develop disease, or frustration, or mental anguish, or emotional turmoil when you are forcing things to come together that energetically are not meant to. It's like putting two ends of the same magnet together, and it repels it. When really you want to have the magnets come together, and it's going to be a better experience for everyone if everyone's situations and energies align more appropriately. So,
right. And I remember. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no.
I was going to say it's kind of funny because I remember asking you when we had some conversations before. For those of you guys listening, we met through work at Unplugged Meditation Studio, and I remember asking you. I would say, "Oh, should I go out this Saturday night? What is my chart looking like?" So it's pretty interesting, like you said, kind of how you can pinpoint what's going on in the universe, and then kind of pairing it with your own chart to kind of see what may happen. It's kind of like a form of fortune telling in a way. And I know you touched on it a little bit, but so pets have an astrology chart too, right?
Anything that moves, including machines, has a chart. And you can determine a lot of things by looking at the chart doesn't. So I have a cat, and my cat has a stellium. So a stellium is a density of planets in one sign. He's a stellium in Leo. And if I have never, anyone who knows the Leo stereotypes, you can see that in my gorgeous cat who literally shines just like the sun, which is Leo's ruling planet. And it's so fascinating because you can never, it's undeniable. It's like everyone who has a pet can say, oh, my pet has a personality. But it depends on their chart. It also depends on where that pet falls in your chart. So if your pet is more of just a routine, that's going to be your 6th house. But if you view your pet like a child, like I do, that falls in your 5th house of true love, romance, and children, and creativity. So how you even associate with an object. So people who really love their cars could fall into their house of children. And, some people might have different things of not being attached to inanimate objects as such. But there's still applicable astrology. When did you purchase the car? Or bought the item? That will also dictate the course of events for that object.
So interesting, because I even heard of astrologers looking up charts for businesses, like when to launch your business.
Businesses, creative endeavors, signing contracts. I once signed a contract a year ago during that Mercury conjunct Neptune, and I remember I was kind of sort of forced to. And I remember being like, "This contract is not going to last. It's going to dissolve." And sure enough, a few months later, it came to a close. The project, I was like, "This project is not going to go forward because I'm saying from the beginning, this is not the time for this thing." And some people, if you push it forward, you have to push it forward. But if you can wait on something and you know that the energy is not in your favor, don't do it. That form of astrology is called electional astrology. And so there's some great astrologers who do readings like that. I usually focus more on the self awareness aspect and the self empowerment of astrology. But part of being self empowered through astrology is also being able to then know your own timing. Like the 2 things of advice I give to everyone just new to astrology. One, it's important to have at least a rudimentary or elementary understanding of each sign, because each sign is part of you. You are that in some way. Secondly, for those who want to start to get more into astrology and know how to determine what's best for them, you're going to want to follow the moon. And not just in understanding the cycles of the phases of like new moon, quarter moon, or full moon, but just knowing what sign it is in and how you respond to that. So it's great to you can keep like a little journal or just make mental notes or notes on your phone of, I feel this way. And while the aspects happening that day, so if you're, for some reason, like right now we're experiencing this grand conjunction of Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto, Pallas and Charclo in Capricorn, that's part of the intensity we're feeling. You still can determine that, well, if the moon is in Capricorn, which it was over the weekend, the moon was engaging in all of that action, creating even more of the energy there. So obviously people can say, well, I feel this way at this time. And if you correlate it to the moon, it's like, I know which moon signs there's certain things that I just can't do. Like they're when the moon's in certain signs, I don't want to socialize. I don't want to leave my house. I don't want to.
That's a good excuse then, right?
What was that?
That's a good excuse then, right? If you're looking at the moon and because they even have journals too. So many journals that I saw last time I was at the bookstore.
I actually use an app called Time Nomad, and they have a widget that if you swipe over, it will tell you exactly where the moon is. So right now the moon is at 20 degrees of Aquarius, and Aquarius is the social energy. It's about people you choose to align with. It's about networking. It would be about sort of something like a podcast for sure. And here we are. We are in the process of completing that. And, understanding that, and especially too, you're a Libra, I'm a Sagittarius. Aquarius is an air sign. Libra's an air sign. Sagittarius is a fire sign. Fire and air, they just create more. They're 2 etheric energies. And air energy in particular deals with the mind. We're talking about very cerebral things. Aquarius and the 11th house rule astrology. We're talking about astrology. And Sag is also higher education and learning, and I'm definitely disseminating a lot of information in this podcast. So
it's all happening right now.
Relationship. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all like just happening right now.
Yeah, and again, like it's simple. So the moon shifts every two to 2.5 days, and once you have an understanding of like, okay, each month when the moon is in the sign, usually this pattern pops up, and how you then in the following month address that pattern is how you start to break out of habitual patterns or unconscious behaviors that are maybe a detriment to you. And that's also, it's important to know not just your moon sign, but you're also what's called your solar lunar arc. So the phase of the moon that you were born under is also important because each month we have a lunar return and we have a phase return. And both are ample opportunities to shift. Once a year, you have they correspond exactly. So once a year, the moon and the sun will make the same aspects to each other while in the same signs at the time of your birth. It's usually around your birthday. That's again why your birthday is such a very powerful time.
Yeah.
So where you can take control of everything and shift your whole paradigm. And we have luckily we have 12 lunar months, and in them there's 12 opportunities each month to change, but actually 24 because your solar lunar arc will also change. So I was born under a full moon. We just had a full moon, so I just started a new cycle of my lunar arc, but my moon isn't in the same sign as that. So I'll have another review period for myself when the moon enters my moon sign, or I have my lunar return. And at the same token, each year we have a lunar return that is a new moon and a lunar return that is a full moon. And that's another very, very powerful opportunity to make shifts or adjustments in your life through understanding these various cycles. And there's a lot of information, and that's why there's increasingly more astrologers to help coach people who maybe don't want to do it necessarily all for themselves, but saying, oh, hey, if something doesn't feel right, don't keep doing it. What's the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over again and hoping for different results.
Yeah. To be more mindful. One question I have to ask, because I know a lot of people are wanting to know more about it. If you could just explain what a retrograde is, especially Mercury retrograde, because it's used so often in social media. People are always talking about it. So if you can just touch on that.
First thing, never fear a retrograde.
Because we're in one right now, right? Mercury's in retrograde.
Mercury's in retrograde. It goes direct on the 12th in Cancer. So a couple things about Mercury retrograde particularly. I'll discuss that retrogrades for every planet first. So Mercury retrogrades 3 to 4 times a year, and that's due to Mercury's orbit and its proximity to the sun. It is closer to the sun than Earth is, and so is Venus. So their retrogrades work a little differently. And remember earlier I mentioned how your Mercury can't be more than 28 degrees away from your sun. It's because of that reason that we always see them in the same zone. And usually what happens in a retrograde is Mercury is usually the planets speed up. So the planets themselves are never moving backwards, but from our vantage point on Earth, when we look at the sky and we see them, they are moving backwards because our orbits aren't the same period, the same length. And so with Mercury, because it's so close to the sun, it retrogrades more frequently, and actually retrogrades through elements in a pattern. So right now we're going through the water element. Prior to that, all the retrogrades were in the fire element, and coming up, all the retrogrades are in the air element. And by doing so, it helps us recalibrate. So when Mercury retrogrades in water signs, it's forcing us to cultivate more mental and emotional balance and finding and cultivating that equilibrium. When it's an earth sign, it's about something tangible or physical in your world, health related, body related, material related. Air energy, it's all about the mind, it's about relationships. Fire energy, it's about the self and spiritual essence. So it helps us slow down. It helps us review, redo, and then move forward when it goes direct, having re-implemented. So it's like they say, never start something new in a retrograde, or never purchase anything, or, there's truth to that. But usually what it just means is that in a future retrograde, we might just have to review it and go back over it. But if you think about something like a contract, sometimes you want to redo a contract because you want to renegotiate, again, that prefix re, like in retrograde, to get better terms, better deal. And it's the same when you're doing things with yourself, and also when you're doing things externally as well. And so all the planets, Mercury retrogrades 2 to 4 times a year, 3 to 4 times a year. And every planet from the asteroid belt, so Ceres is in the asteroid belt, Juno, Pallas, Vesta, those are the 4 main bodies in the asteroid belt. From them outwards, every planet retrogrades once a year. And with the only exceptions are Venus and Mars. Venus retrogrades about every 18 months, and Mars retrogrades about every 22 months, and that's due to their proximity to Earth. They are the planets that border us and are right next to us. So they retrograde less frequently. We just finished a Venus retrograde in Gemini, and that's an 8-year cycle. Venus retrogrades in each sign once every 8 years through a 125-year cycle. And Mars will retrograde this year in Aries, starting in September and going through till about December. Mars rules Aries. It's going to be a huge time for everyone. Yeah. But we're less accustomed to those. So the more frequently a planet retrogrades, the more familiar we are with that energy. And so with something like Saturn spends about 3 years in each sign. So its retrogrades are actually building upon themselves each year. And so retrogrades are actually powerful times to manifest and actually tie in with the projects. Because if you say, okay, I have this idea, now I have to do it. The retrograde happens, and the energy from when a planet is direct, it's always moving forward. So we're just trailblazing ahead. The retrograde says, hey, slow down. Let's go back over. Let's actually take this step by step. And through the process of the retrograde, there are different points of the cycle. So for Venus and Mars, the midpoint of the retrograde is when, from our vantage, the sun blocks out Venus or Mars, and it's called a conjunction. They're at the same point in the sky. For the outer planets, the midpoint is the opposition, where the Earth is actually conjunct the planet from the sun's perspective. So we're having the midpoints of Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto's retrogrades right now, because they are retrograding in Capricorn, and we're in Cancer season. So the Earth is currently transiting the sign of Capricorn, and the sun is transiting the sign of Cancer. And we are coming up on the opposition, so the Earth will sort of eclipse the outer planet's view from the sun. And with the sun, who just met Mercury a few days ago in its midpoint of conjunction, we couldn't see Mercury because the sun was burning it out. It was called Cazimi point. And it's through that's sort of the midpoint. You just think about that point as in a full moon in the cycle of that planet, full moon or a new moon. So in the case of Venus or Mercury, another important aspect to consider is where that conjunction is happening. Is that happening with Mercury and Venus on the same side as Earth, or are they on the other side of the sun from Earth, since their orbits are shorter? So when are they literally next to us in that, from the sun's perspective, are we conjunct them? And more recently, that's what it was with Mercury. Mercury, from the sun's perspective, is in Capricorn, not in Cancer from our perspective. It is still in Cancer from our perspective, but In other times, if the Mercury was behind the Sun during the retrograde, that would also indicate more things. And usually with the retrogrades as well, with Venus and Mercury in particular, they'll transition from appearing at in the evening or in the morning. So if you ever hear the term evening star or morning star, that's depending on where Mercury or Venus are rising in relation to their cycles. So Venus is now the morning star, but for the longest time it was the evening star, and Venus will not return to being the evening star until it retrogrades again in about 18 months. So that kind of dictates the energies as well.
Yeah.
And I can understand this is probably a lot of information for people especially new to astrology. So again, retrogrades, don't fear them. They're great opportunities to work on situations, to plan projects, because once the planet moves forward, you can move forward with everything. So there's really, retrogrades are just telling everyone to slow down, chill into everything, and figure out what you are going to be moving forward with once everything goes direct. And that's, again, getting everyone more realigned with their the natural rhythms of not just their energy, but
kind of just going with the
energy.
Flow.
Yeah, and being in sync with the rhythms of our solar system, and actually being not fighting against nature and the natural order, which a lot of humans have been doing for a very long time. Where if you feel sick and tired, you need to rest. Don't force yourself to go to work because you need money. That's been part of the lesson with this pandemic. We need to slow down.
Sorry, real quick. I just want to I want to tie this in with the next question too, because I think it's related. So what do you predict for the rest of 2020? What is astrology saying is going to kind of go on the rest of this year?
We are going through profound change as a collective and as individuals. And right now, so this last week, the last week of June into the first week of July has been very difficult for a lot of people, because we just ended an eclipse cycle that lasted 18 months, and Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto are all coming together in Capricorn for the first time since 1284. They haven't met in this sign for nearly 700 years. And it's important to sit back and follow what is being implemented. So even though it might seem like our freedoms are being challenged, they're really not. And through the restriction, we actually can experience more freedom. So think about all the people who they're no longer having to go to an office. So they no longer have to worry about getting up and getting ready in the morning and commuting. That's saving them time. That's giving them more freedom in their own time. It's honestly a blessing. The pandemic situation usually always pops up when Saturn and Pluto meet, which is every 37-ish years. The last time Pluto and Saturn met was in the early 80s at the onset of the HIV and AIDS pandemic. And now we see with them coming back together in January. They met in January, and that's when coronavirus really kind of popped into the sphere. And then with Jupiter transiting through that sign, Jupiter expands everything. And Jupiter also deals with foreign travel. And in Capricorn, Jupiter doesn't like being, and there's a lot of restriction in Capricorn. But the lesson between Saturn and Jupiter and Sagittarius and Capricorn is a very practical one. So Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. It has the largest mass, and therefore the largest gravitational energy to it. So, and then Saturn orbits right outside of it. Saturn's gravity actually anchors Jupiter from being attracted to our sun and destroying all of the inner solar system. So while Sagittarius and Jupiter love freedom and expansion, Saturn and Capricorn restrict. And they say, hey, let's stay focused and build a structure and figure out how we can build these long-term visions and goals. And if it weren't for that restriction, life in the inner solar system wouldn't exist, because Jupiter would be so massive that it would be attracted to the sun and destroy Earth itself. And so therefore, the lesson between them is that sometimes you actually find and cultivate more long-lasting, long-term freedom through a temporary restriction.
So like we kind of touched on before we even started recording, we talked a little bit about it. So really it's it seems like it's this big upheaval, which it is, but it's laying the foundation for something stronger, right? We're kind of moving forward.
Yes.
As a consciousness.
As a consciousness and as a collective and as a species, and moving less so out of this idea of countries and all these little things, more so of a global consciousness as a oneness that we know. The millennials know in their lifetime we will make world peace happen. We're just kind of waiting for the older paradigm to go away. And that also resonates with the story of Jupiter and Saturn, where Saturn, when Saturn was younger, the universe was ruled by Uranus. Uranus was Saturn's father, and Uranus became tyrannical, and Saturn had to overthrow his own father. And then what happened was Saturn, knowing what he had done to his father, became very paranoid and ended up eating his own children, all except for Jupiter, or Zeus. And Zeus then had to overthrow his tyrannical father, and then became the god of gods. And it's a similar lesson that we're seeing repeated, where the younger generations know what direction the world's going. We have these older generations who are very resistant. Not all of them, again, not to cast a whole blanket statement, but we cannot deny the fact that the world is in a place where there are clear solutions to some problems, but certain people in power, an unjust, outdated system that isn't evolving with the people and therefore restricting life. And part of what Cancer Capricorn teaches us is that life and the structure that life lives in needs to support itself. And once the structure becomes a detriment to life, it's no longer in balance, and that structure has to be torn down. And that's the process of what we're going through is. And we're going to see this. So the rest of July will progressively get easier. Leo season is going to be very chill. So there'll still be some things going on, but it will be a bit of a reprieve between this intense energy. Virgo season, we're going to see some transitions. Mars will retrograde. Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn will turn direct. But once Libra season commences again, it's going to make a similar angle to how things were during Aries season, which is when we first went into the pandemic, as well as a similar relationship to what's been happening in Cancer season, because they're all of a similar energy with Capricorn. So Libra season is going to be a bit intense. Into Scorpio season will be intense because that's when Jupiter and Pluto make their third meeting this year. So they just last week made their second meeting, and they're retrograding. So when they were moving forward, they met back at the beginning of Aries season, when we all went into the lockdown. That was Jupiter meeting Pluto and expanding all the issues and the virus and all those situations. They retrograded back. They started retrograding, and as they got closer, the results started getting more and more intense again. So like last week, there was actually a spike in all of these in cases around the country, and then we'll see again when they're direct moving forward again in November. They're going to meet for the third and final time, and then Jupiter and Pluto won't meet again for 12 years, and by that time they'll be in different signs. We'll see the results of how everyone's handled this come November. So there'll be some challenge there.
Make it through the rest of the fall, and then it could clear up. There's hope for us after that.
There is hope through all of it, because we are being asked to go within and be with ourselves. And Mars is going to retrograde in Aries. Aries is the first sign. Aries is the sign of the self. Mars rules Aries. So we are going to have this opportunity to heal our egos, heal our masculine energy, figure out what direction we want in our life, by following our passions. Aries and Mars are also passions. They are our energy. They're our action. Mars is our action planet. Mars is how we move and what we choose to do. And we are able to review that. So if you are in isolation, if you are in quarantine, make the most of it. Learn something new. Go back into an old hobby. Figure out what you can bring to the table, because the new economy is being born, and it's going to be born through our individual creative gifts and talents. And It's part of this Aquarian economy that's being birthed, and there's nothing to fear with any of that. It's just we have this opportunity. Make it through the year. Make it through the rest of 2020. At the beginning of Capricorn season, around December 20th, 21st of this year, Saturn and Jupiter enter Aquarius together. This is a very rare aspect as well. Jupiter and Saturn only meet once every 20 years. And for them to be moving from one sign into another is also a very rare occurrence. And we will see the birth of something new coming out.
And when did you say that was?
December 20th, 21st. So basically the winter solstice is going to be a huge shift in paradigm and setting a new 20-year cycle of Aquarian values. So it's going to be very much an Aquarian. The last cycle we've been in has been a Taurus one. The last time Saturn and Jupiter met was in the year 2000 in the sign of Taurus. And Taurus, on a mundane level, relates to money, relates to self-worth and value. And you look at the last 20 years, it became very much about you were what you were worth in terms of a physical commodity. And it became more about oil, and it became more about these earthly, random things. But Earth energy, and Taurus is definitely a ruling planet of our planet, of Gaia, a ruling sign of our planet. And so it became much more about these natural resources when we needed to really be focusing on more sustainable environmental situations. So now that the meeting is going to come into Aquarius, it will be more about community. It will be more about who you choose to be around, like-minded individuals. This idea of the future. We're going to see technology boom for the rest of the 2020s, especially because come 2024, 2025, Pluto will enter Aquarius.
Which really, this kind of leads me to my last question. We don't have much time left, but I have to ask you. I kind of know that it ties in a little bit with the age of Aquarius, but what are your thoughts on aliens, UFOs? Do you think we have something like coming up soon within the next 5 to 10 years, more discoveries? What is your take on all of that?
I think it's highly likely. Aquarius does rule, would I think fall into the energy of the alien, of extraterrestrial. Especially with Pluto there, we're going to see an upsurgence of AI, technological advancement, advanced consciousness, a utopian ideal of the world, and that will be probably extraterrestrial life and having that knowledge. Again, I think part of it is that some of these older generational people, they're outer planets in their charts, because your outer planets are social and collective energies, whereas the inner planets, the closer they are to Earth and the Sun, are more what we call personal planets. They make up your personality, whereas anything outside of the asteroid belt is something dealing with other. Their outer planets are in earlier signs, making it more about the self, whereas when you have energies in the last 6 signs, Libra through Pisces, it's more focused on outer concepts, thinking about others, thinking ahead, planning for the future. I don't think they can consciously comprehend some of those things, and I think we're again not trying to say anything negative. It's just part of life and the cycle of life. We need to let the old way go so we can move into the new. And I think, again, as we can continue to evolve consciously, I think the majority of people today could handle conscious awareness of aliens. I think the majority of people know intuitively that they're there. I think over the next 2,000 years, we'll see something akin to Star Trek and or Star Wars be birthed. In the long term, something where we are part of this galactic government or this galactic story. Hopefully, or we become trans-dimensional beings of some sort, or that's just so much theory there. But
I hope so.
There are aliens there, and it's going to get more. It's going to be more likely for us to interact with them.
Right.
Especially as these transits happen in the later signs, we're having a lot of heavyweight energies in the later signs in the first half of the zodiac, the new cycle. I think it's there. I think. So it's just
No, I was gonna say, so there is a possibility, you know. I feel like in the media it's kind of coming out. I saw the Pentagon maybe a month or two ago. Um, they posted
UFO, yeah.
right, yeah, but
so we're getting there.
Yeah, Aaron. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with all of us. You have so much information. I have so many more questions that we'll probably have to do another episode.
Definitely.
So for all of you guys listening, have any questions, Aaron is great with birth charts. He could look into your own personal birth chart and tell you so much that you never knew about yourself. So thank you again, Aaron.
Thank you.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Definitely. You have a good day.
You too. Bye.